The Washington family moved to the Mount Vernon area in the late 17th century. George inherited the plantation in 1761, expanding the grand house to 7,000 square feet with a piazza, a storehouse, smokehouse, gristmill, and stable. Tobacco was the first cash crop, followed by flax, hemp, cotton, and wheat. Franklin was apprenticed to his brother James at 16, a Boston printer. Ben ran away and settled in Philadelphia, publishing the Pennsylvania Gazette starting in 1729. Franklin had a long list of civic-minded schemes to improve the colony, including a lending library and a philosophical society. In 1754, Franklin published the woodcut Join or Die. This was not about independence. Instead, it was a call to form a plan of union to provide the common defense against France, Spain, Indians, and slaves. It failed because colonial governors and other elites did not want to give up power. Also in 1754, George Washington led a Virginia militia to attack a French camp, only to surrender. Not a great start for a military career. It did not help the growing tension between the French and English, leading to war. The French and English began the 7 Years' War in 1754 in the North American colonies, with indigenous tribes picking sides. The war helped unite the colonies. The British sent troops who would plunder homes and farms. France would lose and cede Canada and New France, but keep their Caribbean colonies. The war left Britain and the colonies in debt, and the colonies in a depression. British troops stayed in America, and England began to tax the colonies, beginning with the Sugar Act of 1764. The colonists opposed the taxes, protesting taxation without representation. Colonial leaders called for a boycott of British and Caribbean goods. Caribbean islands grew sugar cane and other tropical foods using slave labor. There were relatively few Europeans to the enslaved populations. The slaves had every reason to run away, kill their masters, and start a revolution. The white owners and overseers were well aware and favored English taxes to support British troops. A very different perspective from the mainland colonies. England kept trying to enforce the taxes on the colonies, with Boston the most stridently opposed. The East India Company was facing bankruptcy in part because of the colonial boycott. Parliament passed the Tea Act, reducing the tea tax, and tea was shipped to Boston. Bostonians took the opportunity to have a party in 1773 and dumped 342 chests of tea into Boston Harbor. Parliament was not amused and passed the Coercive Act, which closed Boston Harbor. John Adams wrote, "Tea must be universally renounced, and I must be weaned, and the sooner the better." Americans liked coffee, and Boston opened the first coffee house in 1689. Granted, Americans drank a lot of tea, a reason to tax it, then the boycott. The problem with coffee was people had to roast and grind it themselves. Coffee house visits became frequent after the Boston Tea Party. People drank more of it across the colonies, presumably learning how to roast, grind, and brew it. Washington became one of the fervent coffee drinkers. Coffee was grown in Caribbean islands and could be smuggled in. British General Thomas Gage, Commander-in-Chief of the British forces, implemented the Intolerable Acts. He seized ammunition near Boston and marched on Lexington in April 1775. Gage was met by 70 militiamen. 10 were killed in the confrontation. Patriots fled Boston. The Continental Congress met and voted to create a Continental Army with Washington in command. Washington headed to Boston to take charge. Lord Dunmore, Royal Governor of Virginia, issued the Dunmore Proclamation, offering freedom to slaves fighting for the British, an action horrifying and angering Southerners and encouraging American independence. Thousands of slaves fled their masters and attempted to make it to British lines. Would the Africans be treated fairly? They were treated horribly if captured and poorly if they made it. Many died on British ships, others killed or captured during the war, and those transported to Canada or elsewhere treated badly. Independence was proposed and a declaration written and passed, with July 4th considered the big day. It's on to the American Revolution, a war that was not officially over until 1783. Next time on Food, History, and Mystery.